this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a review of the season premiere of House of the Dragon Season 2, which was titled A Son for a Son. Now there are likely to be spoilers throughout for this episode, so just beware when going to this overall video, and you can check out my coverage of the previous season of the show, and I'll leave some links within the description. So as we all know by now, this is the big budget HBO prequel series to the mega successful Game of Thrones, based on the fantasy novels written by George R.R. Martin. House of the Dragon takes place several hundred of years before the events of Game of Thrones, where the House Targaryen was at its most powerful, claiming dominion over the seven kingdoms of Westeros, and at the time was currently being ruled by King Viserys. And over the course of the story we see various individuals with their own ambitions to lay claim to the Iron Throne. Now the two most integral individuals to the story is Viserys' daughter Rhaenyra, who was the original person in line to be succession to the throne, but she was denied because at this point a woman could not sit on the throne. We then have Viserys' bride Alice Hightower, who was chosen against her will to be with the king, and over the course of the story we see her bearing children who could be the male heir to the throne that Viserys was so desperate for at the beginning of the story. Now multiple events occur over several decades which sees both women assume certain territories of the kingdom and ultimately clash against one another. Now the finale of the season 1 saw the escalation of this conflict when one of Rhaenyra's sons, named Lucretius, was killed after being pursued on his dragon by Aemon Targaryen and his other dragon Vhagar, who consumes them both in mid-air, and when discovering of his death we see Rhaenyra mourning and finally showing some desire to go to war. Now in terms of this opening episode, we first had a scene going back to the north where we see Rhaenyra's son Jace trying to build connections with the Stark dynasty, and where we see Lord Cregan Stark having a discussion with him about the wall and what lays beneath it, and of course having watched Game of Thrones we all know the significance of this location later on down the line. But we later on catch up with Daemon, who is preparing for war as Rhaenyra continues to grieve the loss of her son. We see Alicent and Sir Criston, who are now lovers, which was very surprising, given greater context given the fact that in the first season, Criston of course was very much smitten and in love with Rhaenyra, especially when they were in their younger days. So that was very surprising to see that scene. But then we follow after that with Alicent back at the council, and they have various discussions about the latest strategies in order to combat the threat of Rhaenyra. And this is where we see again that Aegon is clearly not fit to rule. We had that very funny scene later on where he has to address the civilians of the kingdom and he's constantly making wrong decisions, all at Otto's disapproval. I very much liked the montage of the funeral of Lucretius, where we have the various back and forth between seeing the overall grieving of Rhaenyra and also the reference of both Alicent as well. And I love this sequence, especially with all the musical soundtrack and all of the cinematography, and I just think it's great again to show how this show is very seamless in terms of its overall production value and aesthetic. But we then move on to the story where later on that Daemon is very much putting initiatives to get revenge, claiming a son for a son as per the title. And then we see things eventually escalate as the plan to infiltrate and kill one of the sons culminates in a very tense and quite gruesome scene, not necessarily for the graphic and its violence, but in how the events were overall planned out, where we see the two assassins, named characters Blood and Cheese in terms of the source material, take Aegon's wife captive and basically ask her to tell them which of the two siblings is the son and which one is the daughter. She tells them which one is the son and they go to kill the son, and then distraught she goes to protect the daughter, walking across all over the castle before walking in with Alicent in bed with Criston once more, before telling her that one of her grandsons is dead, and that's when we cut to the credits. Now there's been a lot of hype about House of Dragon Season 2. For me and for many fans, Season 1 very much exceeded expectations, especially when we followed the huge disappointment that was the finale of the final season of Game of Thrones. So there was a lot of expectation going into the series. And I have to say that overall, this episode wasn't really that much of an eventful installment. It felt much more like an epilogue to the first season finale rather than a big bang opener to the second season. Now there will be some criticisms here that this episode was a bit of a slow burn, and I can understand that because I think running at over an hour long in terms of runtime, it really wasn't needed. we really didn't get much in terms of what actually happened here. This was much more about just setting all of the chess pieces in play in terms of covering all of the individuals that will feature most prominently throughout the story and the ongoing battle to reclaim the throne. And that's been an essential part of both Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, so I didn't mind that too much. I didn't mind the pace of the episode because we've had an investment of these overall characters from the first season. And Game of Thrones itself was very similar in easing into the overall story and taking its time in the first couple of episodes before fully exploding halfway through the season. And I probably expect the same trajectory here in terms of House of the Dragon. But despite that, I still think overall it remains a very classy show. As I mentioned before, all of the production values are there in terms of the music and the cinematography. There's so much poise and sophistication here. Everything just flows so easily and so smoothly. All of the actors involved are excellent and superb in how they portray all of their characters. There really isn't a misstep in terms of the overall production value and the overall delivery of the show itself. So I didn't mind that this wasn't the most action-packed episode. Because as we all know, despite all of the heavy spectacle in terms of all of the battle scenes and of course seeing all of the dragons, Game of Thrones and House of Dragon is at its best when it's dealing with all of the multiple characters, their nuances, their personalities, very much their flaws and also their ambitions and their strategies and the politics behind all of their actions. That's the real heart and the real essence of both Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. So I think this episode was a reminder of the best elements of the show, and I'm sure we will get later on the huge spectacle and effects that a lot of people are hoping to see throughout this second season so far. So whilst not an outstanding premiere episode, for me still it was very satisfactory, as I'm sure we will get better things to come, what I'm sure will end up being one of the best premiere shows indeed of 2024. So those are my overall thoughts and quick feelings of the opening episode of House of Dragon Season 2. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any other further comments or movies or television series or any other topics within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, let me know within the comments and I will see if I can provide further content for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also like and hit those subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.